I didn't anticipate this. I don't think any of us did. We looked at the polls over the last few weeks. Conventional wisdom was the president gets 48, 49% in the final polls. He's not going to get much more than that, maybe 1% more in the actual election. He got way over that, and I think that left everyone sort of puzzled. What the heck happened?
And the anger of the Republicans, feeling that the press coverage in the early afternoon had been shaped by the exit polls, not that anybody actually talked about them, but that everybody had it in their mind. I think there's going to be a lot of hell to pay after all this alleged reform that these numbers were wrong.
David Brooks, what do you think's happened on the exit polls? Do you have a theory? I know nobody knows, but why the exit polls are so wrong.
We all rely on this stuff not only for predicting, but for trying to figure out what the electorate looks like.
I have yet to hear a theory of the case, in effect, for what happened, why it really happened.
We can never sweep under the rug disturbing questions, either because we don't want to face them or because we think it may advantage one political party and disadvantage another. Once that starts, the truth recedes even more.
If the Republicans, in fact, stole this election, the Democrats were willing accomplices by sitting by and letting it happen and not challenging it. I mean, there is a sort of unspoken situation here where the Democrats don't want to raise these issues.
When Senator Bob Hagan saw his vote switch from John Kerry to George Bush, he tried to report what had happened to Democratic headquarters.
I touched John Kerry, and as I touched it, it immediately went to Bush. I called the Kerry campaign, and I said, I really think that this is a serious problem. We need to talk about this. You know, we should get it out. The press would be interested in this. But the Kerry campaign said, leave it alone. Don't talk about it. It's not something we want to get out.
For decades, Senator Hagan's district in Mahoning County had been a hub of political controversy involving both major parties.
When I was on the Board of Elections in the 80s, there was a Democrat who was Secretary of State, and he made outrageous rulings that helped the Democrats win elections in Ohio. That's the kind of system that we have, and unless people want to change that, that's the kind of system we're going to have.
Both parties toy with the vote when they have the opportunity, but at the moment, the sophisticated methods and the big money which drives the sophisticated methods using massive computers, massive mailings, databases, that is right now in the control of the Republican Party.
Even though the Republicans seem to control the voting technology and the corporations that count the votes, the Democrats have not exhibited a keen interest in addressing this situation.
If the Democrats won't support the Constitution and the Republicans will, then I'll stand with Republicans. If the Republicans don't defend the Constitution and Democrats will, then I'll stand with the Democrats. And the great fear is that we'll reach a point where neither party will defend the Constitution.
Exit polls developed in the late 1960s for years and years were regarded as very accurate and reliable indicators of how an election would turn out. Exit polls in recent years have become increasingly inaccurate.
Exit polls, before they were adjusted, had pointed toward a Kerry victory. The official vote tally reflected a Bush victory. A 3% decrease for Kerry and a 3% increase for Bush equals a 6% discrepancy in the margin of victory. The margin of error is the maximum percentage one can reasonably expect a poll to differ from the actual results.
When you're dealing with statistics, you never get certainty. A discrepancy of 6% is so far outside the margin of error of that poll that statisticians across the board will give you general agreement that it could not occur as a matter of chance or statistical aberration.
Exit polls were a focus of concern at meetings about election problems hosted by Representative John Conyers.
Today, we at Zogby International, too, have questions of our own, many of which center on early exit polling results that were uncharacteristically inaccurate in several battleground states. This election has produced unprecedented levels of suspicion regarding its outcome.
There has been very little willingness to cooperate by those who hold the information, which would be basically the consortium of major media outlets. They claim proprietary rights to all this data.
That was the only checks and balances we had with these electronic voting machines. The electronic voting machines have no audit trail, they can't be recounted. We have to have some backup.
Given the problems in 2000, 2002, and 2004, voters approached the midterm elections of 2006 with increased caution.
And of course, Wolf, we've talked a lot about the more than 850 monitors and observers who were on hand today in 22 states sent by the Department of Justice, and they're there to deal with issues as they arise.
Voting glitches have been popping up at some polling stations across the country this election day.
It's the same problem. It's that they try to start the machines up in the morning and something goes wrong.
The biggest question tonight is whether or not your vote will actually count. Election officials all across the country have been reporting problems with e-voting machines.
Data analysts have noted the correlation between the rise of electronic voting devices and elections in which exit polls don't match final tallies. In 2006, there were, once again, a range of computer malfunctions and discrepancies between votes cast and official totals. At first, exit polls showed Democratic House candidates winning by 11.5%. After the exit poll was adjusted by Edison Mitofsky to match the vote totals, the final results showed Democrats winning by only 7.6%. This discrepancy reflects at least 3 million fewer votes for Democratic candidates than exit polls predicted. Until 2002, the national exit poll margin of error had always been plus or minus 1.3%. With mounting discrepancies between exit polls and the official vote count after the 2006 election, pollsters chose to increase the official margin of error from 1.3 to 3%.
Either exit polls are becoming harder and harder to do, or voting manipulation is becoming easier and easier to do.
There have been a wide range of election irregularities in the years since 1996. Have any laws actually been broken?
Welcome back. My guest tonight, former Republican operative who served time in federal prison for his role in the 2002 New Hampshire phone jamming operation. He writes about the experience in his book, How to Rig an Election, Confessions of a Republican Operative. Please welcome to the show, Alan Raymond. Sir, what is the phone jamming scandal of 2002?
Well, that was when I got hired by the Republican National Committee to jam phone lines. It's exactly what it sounds like. We called in, it was like a prank. Democrats in Manchester, New Hampshire.
A prank on democracy.
What we did is we called into where the Democrats were doing GOTV, and we tied up the phone lines. So nothing could go in or could go out on Election Day, and anything you do on Election Day is to get out the vote.
How do you convince yourself that this isn't voter suppression?
Well, you talk to an attorney, which is exactly what I did. And so in politics, there's right and wrong, and then there's what happens in a campaign.
Allegations of wrongdoing in the 2004 presidential election were widespread.